Hi everyone. I apologize that this is taking so long to come out, but it's high time we did a roster slash layout slash all collection update. Um, Figured I would just kind of talk about what's going on in my life right now. As you can see, we have a layout again. No more of this running trains on the floor for the time being. Just a little temporary setup. Threw some buildings down. Got a little farm scene courtesy of my fiance. Yes, I'm getting married. Exciting stuff. So that's kind of why everything's temporary right now. I will be tearing this all down and hopefully taking at least the trains and the track with me, maybe not the bench work. There's a massive sell pile in the corner here. There may still be more to sell out of all of this equipment and that equipment. Yeah, there's all my storage bins are there. There's a lot going on. Big changes are coming, not necessarily in terms of getting a layout, but in terms of location. I will be getting my own place soon. Don't know how soon, but hopefully soon-ish. And like I said, planning on taking all of this that I can with me. Maybe not the bench work, because depending on where I live, I may not have space for it, but at least the models themselves and the temporary Kato track are coming with me. So figured we would, well, I guess first I should address no more Union Pacific. Well, not entirely no more UP. These three, or wow, I can't count, four, plus technically three of them on the shelf, project shelved over there, are the remnant of my Union Pacific modeling days. I'm not completely through with it. I still very much like modern excursion steam. I'm on the hunt for currently a 210-2, the 5511 that's being restored alongside the 3985 in Illinois. That's going to be fun trying to get one of those. But after a lot of consideration and spending a boatload of time around Nickel Plate Road 765 and just being in nickel plate territory in general, I got a huge fascination for the nickel plate and decided to transition my modeling efforts over to them, because as you can see, it is far easier to acquire Berkshires than it is big boys. Berkshires for a decent price, I should say. Because all of these I got, except for these, well, all of these I got for fairly decent discounts over the course of the time, or the last year actually. I'm amazed that I transitioned that fast. All of these, save for this one, I got last year. All of these locomotives I got last year. So yeah, the fact that I was able to switch as fast as I did when I did, it was pretty impressive. Maybe a little excessive, honestly. But yeah, I've been really enjoying learning a lot about the nickel plate. I've enjoyed the practices, or learning the operating practices, the industries that they served. It's been really fun researching everything in regards to the nickel plate. And one of the main reasons I switched as well is, while I do love the UP still, there is still a large part of me that would like to model Union Pacific in full someday. But for the time being, nickel plate just makes more sense, especially for the space. You could very easily have small length 10-15 car trains behind a Berkshire, or some of the diesels here, obviously, with nickel plate's fast freight service and everything. It just made more sense to model a railroad that ran smaller, shorter trains in such a confined space that I have. I mean, you can see this layout's really only about 10 by 10, if I'm correct. It should be about 10 foot by 10 foot. And it just makes more sense to have a smaller locomotive, maybe not smaller roster, because obviously I have a pretty massive roster for my location. But made more sense to me to have smaller trains, and therefore not needing larger motive power Obviously, it doesn't look quite right to have a big boy hauling only about 15 cars unless they're passenger cars behind the 4014 or something like that. And that was the other thing, is that I found myself really only running these 3 or 4, if you count the 4466 here. I found myself really only running, well, actually initially just these 2 and the big boy. 3985 was as of last year. We'll talk more about that, but yeah, I just really only found myself running a handful of locomotives at one given time. Whereas with my nickel plate stuff, I kind of run a wider variety of everything. I feel more obligated to run different equipment. It's easier to pick out a smaller locomotive, throw a shorter train behind it. I mean, really, it's just those cars right there. And sometimes the pacemaker equipment is all I really leave out right now. And then I interchange between my nickel plate passenger train back there and my Empire State Express consist. You guys saw the video on the Empire State Express Hudson, which does bring me to, in addition to the nickel plate, a lot of the stuff that I got interested in also ties into the New York Central, but it also started with, I already had this Hudson, obviously. I snagged a MTH L3C Mohawk last year, and that is what kind of kicked off the interest in the nickel plate, or New York Central as well. I've also really loved the Central. So effectively, nickel plate, New York Central, and Union Pacific are my 3 favorite railroads, I would have to say. Maybe not necessarily in that order. Maybe in that order, I'm not sure. But those are my top 3 favorite railroads for sure. But in terms of the Central, I don't plan on modeling a lot of New York Central equipment. It's mainly just getting bigger steam. I don't really care for the small steam that much. I mean, I do, but for not really being into the New York Central as much as I am the nickel plate, it makes more sense to have a wider variety of nickel plate equipment, and the New York Central is more just going to be through equipment, and then the UP stuff is just for funsies along with all that. So I guess we'll start with the diesels, kind of talk about that. I've talked long enough about why I'm here, what I'm doing, and I hope it makes sense. I hate talking to a camera. I'm not good at it, so bear with me. I'm trying to get better. So this is the newest acquisition to the collection. This is, oh, I apologize, I'm going to get on my knees here. Keep my shadow out of the way. This is a Walthers Proto NW2 that I picked up a few weeks ago, I think. Yeah, it's got a Locksound Next 18 in it. This is actually the DCC ready version, but it was on sale at my local hobby store. It was like a 20% off MSRP, so, or sale price, so I ended up snagging this and dropping a decoder, and I had to trade Locksound 21 pin for this Next 18. I did not realize these took Next 18. So yeah, this is a wonderful model. I really do like this thing a lot. And the main reason I got it is because it's got the nickel plate safety cage, or safety railing on the back that the crew's called monkey bars. Yeah, this weighs in at 8 ounces. It's got a full metal chassis and everything. Beautiful model. And I think the yellow on this is objectively the best nickel plate yellow that I've seen so far. Maybe? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it's supposed to be more of a gold. It might actually be the RS3. No, it's the RS3. My bad. But that yellow does look nice. I will say that much. Here's my first diesel switcher for the nickel plate that I purchased in a huge lot of trains. I purchased, I think, about $1,500 worth of models for $400 early April last year, and this was one of the engines that came in it. This is Proto 2000 SW9. Also has a Locksound Micro. This one's been modified because it was missing the headlight, and the front handrails were just beat to heck. So I tried to brush paint on there. You can see that it's all coming off. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to fix that. And the headlight was missing, so I bought a Detail Associates NW EMD style headlight, or whatever they call it. Oops. And I went ahead and swapped it on the rear as well, kind of keep a cohesive look between the front and the rear. This thing needs a lot of details replaced on it, but it's got a Scale Sounds speaker, and I also installed a cab light on it as well. So that is one thing that actually sets it apart from this one. I was expecting this to have a cab light as well, but I guess not. Let me use this little uncoupling tool so I'm not getting my fat hand in the way. Bowser RS3, this one, Yeah, this is the one that has objectively the best nickel plate yellow in my opinion, and maybe somebody on the that's more acquainted with nickel plate history can correct me if this is the correct color or not. It might actually be closer to the Genesis model, but this objectively looks the best in my opinion. Just the right balance of color. This was an eBay find. Dropped a scale sound speaker and lock sound decoder in this as well. I had to do a little bit of rewiring to get the Mars light to work right, but that's fine. It didn't really bother me any. One of the nicest running diesels that I have. It is silk smooth, super quiet. I'd love to find another one of these, but as you guys can probably imagine, and as those of you who are in the nickel plate know, these are a pain in the rear end to find. I have not seen one of these come up for a hot minute on eBay. So yeah, good luck trying to find another one. I do have to replace a sunshade on the engineer's side because that snapped off unfortunately, but that's not an issue. Genesis GP9 with a Tsunami 2 decoder that I paid 20 bucks for. I had a whole installation video planned, and then I blew the original lights test running this thing, so I had to wait, order a light kit in. Light kit proved to be really frustrating, and also realized that I was not recording for most of that, so that video may never surface. I might throw it out there. It's also going to be over an hour and a half, and I don't know if you guys want to sit there and watch me build or try to DCC install a GP9 for an hour and a half, but do let me know if you're interested. This is definitely the most detailed locomotive that I own, or diesel locomotive that I own anyway. All the separately fitted etched parts and whatnot, it's spectacular. Love this thing. Still needs a little bit of improvement, and the one complaint that I have is putting the scale sound speaker in the rear requires you to take the weight out. So this locomotive lost a good chunk of its weight and thereby pulling power. So it's kind of artificially limited the tractive effort of this model, but is what it is. At least it sounds really good. Another Proto 2000 GP9. This is a Phase 3 GP9 that I bought. Actually, I bought these two in tandem. This is also a SD9 from Proto. Both of these came with a lot of damage. I've done my best to fix most of that damage. You can see I still got to replace some of the MU hoses on the SD9. You'll notice they're also missing their headlights. That's because obviously the Proto 2000 models came with the headlights nipped off, or just headlights. There's no Mars light like there, gyro light like there would be on the GP9. So I'm going to be ordering some correct parts to replace on these and hardwiring everything in. Still got to figure out how to reuse the original light beams to make the number boards work without also becoming part of the Mars light circuit, but that'll come with time. And now we're on to passenger equipment. So this is another Proto 2000 GP9 that was a custom job. I don't know who did it is the thing. I wish I did, but this was a custom that I found on eBay. It was sold to me in a Genesis box. You can see there's two different shades of yellow, and I'm not a huge fan of that, but that is what it is. And then the decals as well don't quite match everything else, but it's been custom detailed. I think it was a Phase 3 GP9 that somebody added the torpedo tubes to. The 482 was one of, I think, 5 Jeeps that were outfitted for passenger service on the nickel plate. So figured it'd be neat to have at least one extra backup passenger diesel alongside these two, which are objectively my favorite nickel plate diesels that I own. The Alco PAs, these are MTH models, pretty much stock MTH models. These are actually the DCC ready variants, with one exception being the horns. Towards the 50s, the nickel plate swapped the single chime Wabco horns, I think, with Nathan M5s. So I bought 2 Nathan M5s and painted them up using True Color nickel plate blue. 180 is the only one currently that has a decoder that has a Soundtrack Tsunami 2, and the 181 is going to follow suit. I chose the 180 because it's the most cosmetically complete. The 181 is missing a few lift rings, I think, towards the rear, and then the whole back, there's a piece of the back that's snapped off underneath. Yeah, there should be more parts here. I don't know how that got broken off, but it did. So, but it's the side of the engine that you're really never going to see, so I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, these two are absolutely my favorite diesels. I'm looking forward to getting this one running, but I've been putting it off because I really only need the one, and the 180 is perfectly fine. I do want to get at least one more, and I don't know if it's going to be MTH or if it's going to be Proto or Rapido, and do the 190, the preserved PA that is actually, I think it's actually the Santa Fe number 62, that was then renumbered as the Delaware and Hudson 18, and then Doyle McCormick, who's the guy that runs and operates SP 4449, or at least he did. I think he's retired now, but he owned it for a while and was going to restore it as the 190 because that was, I think he has a childhood connection to that locomotive because his dad used to work for the Nickel Plate or something. And that one's special because it's got a 251 prime mover. These two obviously have the 244 prime movers. So I'm going to eventually buy a 190 model or buy another MTH PA and make a 190 model and then convert it to have a 251 prime mover just to match the preserved example. Oh, that was the other thing. Backtracking a little bit, 345 here. This may actually end up becoming Nickel Plate Road 358 because as it stands, 358 is the only working locomotive I've ever been in the cab of while it's active. So that was a cool experience. I became a member with the Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society, actually. Part of why I switched to modeling nickel plate and have kind of fallen in love with 765 so much. And with our members weekend, 765 suffered a mechanical failure the day she was supposed to be there for a photo shoot, so they just had the 358 on display, and they gave everybody a chance to hop in the cab, and I got a last-minute cab tour during our photo shoot, so that was cool. So yeah, that might end up getting a full repaint, kind of to reflect more on this one or this one, I'm not sure. Oops. Make the colors more akin to these, and then turn this into the 358 instead. Or I might just buy a model 358, I'm not sure yet. We'll see. But yeah, sorry. Had to divert just a little bit. So, yeah. I guess we'll move on to steam locomotives now. Alright, just turning the corner. We're looking at the only two steam switchers that I have. These are both Proto 2000 models. Only two steam switchers I have for the nickel plate, I should say. And they'll probably stay that way for a while. We have 384, which is actually still in preservation. She's in really rough shape now, somewhere in Ohio. I can't remember where. This is an ex-Wheeling and Lake Erie engine that used to be, I think, the 3984, and then when the nickel plate merged or bought out the Wheeling, it became nickel plate 384. This is also an ex-Wheeling locomotive, the 271. This is a total custom detail. I've changed the headlight and headlight bracket out, have the number plate and everything, custom Mars light, or not Mars lights, marker lights. Completely re-decaled this thing. This was the first official nickel plate locomotive that I owned. This was actually not nickel plate though. It started life as a Louisville and Nashville 080 that I custom repainted and re-lettered. Not repainted, but custom re-lettered and re-detailed as the 271. This locomotive, I think, was assigned out of Mango Junction on the coal interchange with the Pennsylvania Railroad. I'm not 100% sure why I picked the 271 specifically, but the number seemed clean. I think I've heard that number somewhere before in a different video, but I can't remember for sure. But yeah, so there's that one. 384. 384 used to have a QSI decoder installed. I upgraded it to lock sound, and I couldn't find a whistle file that I liked that matched anything close to what this would have had. Not that I could find anyway, so I just picked a Denver Rear Grand 5-chime. I think that fits this model quite well. And the 271 has Blue Nami. It's my currently only steam locomotive that has, only model in general that has Blue Nami. So, kind of neat. I do bounce back and forth between lock sound and soundtracks, personally. I don't really know which one I like more. I just kind of, like I said, I kind of bounce and vary between locomotives. I do like a little bit of differentiation between my steam engines. And now we're on to the Berkshires. Here are my two Bachmans. I bought these, actually I had 3 of them at one point. I had the undecorated one here. Well, this was an undecorated. It was actually painted for Chicago Northwestern, and the tender still has the decals on it. I'll show you in a minute. This was the 759. It's since been renumbered as the 736. And then I also had the 763. But obviously, the thing with the Bachmann Berkshires that I learned is that they are not at all related to the S2s. So obviously, Bachmann makes 765 and 759, but these are through and through S1 Berkshire clones. They are near direct copies of the S1, and so that is what I decided to keep them as. This one I debated on making into a custom Wheeling Lake Erie S4, but I feel like that's going to be too much of a challenge for me at this time, so this is just going to remain a stock standard S1. Might become one of the passenger variant S1s, I'm not 100% sure yet. We'll see. Haven't quite decided on a number for this. This one's also kind of in limbo because the tender, as you can see, is missing its trucks. I actually stole the trucks off of this one for a project that I've since sold. It was actually my very first Berkshire. The 742, you guys probably saw the video on that one. Which I regret selling, honestly. I know I did it to get my 765, but I regret selling that thing. I should have kept it. So, yeah, these two are perfectly okay models. The Bachmann Berkshires are actually really nice. I know they lack a lot in terms of detail, but I am relatively impressed with what they're able to do. 736 is currently the only one that's kind of customized. It has a nickel plate shops pilot that I 3D printed, designed to fit over the existing Bachmann mount, and it was actually a perfect fit. I was blown away that it fit first try. So yeah, that was really cool, seeing that go right in there. So this is the only one that's got that pilot. It is a little on the flimsy side, but it's okay. I mean, I'm not really worried about breaking anything off at the moment. So this has an Economy. This I'm not 100% sure what it's going to get, but it might just go ahead and get a Soundtracks decoder. This is probably going to get, the 736 is going to get its Economy swapped out for a Blue Nami or a ESU at some point. So yeah. Next up is the single rarest locomotive that I have. This is an Overland Models nickel plate S2 that I have customized as number 757, the preserved nickel plate Berkshire up in Bellevue, undergoing a cosmetic restoration. This one, the reason I chose the 757 for this model is because I already have a 765. I have another one on pre-order, actually, the Cardinal River Model 765, so I don't know if I'll be keeping the MTH one. But since I already had a 765, at least planned to get a 765, I decided to make this one a different model. And so I chose the 757 because the 757 was the very first nickel plate Berkshire that I ever saw as a kid, while it was still at Strasburg, actually, before they moved it. So it was at the time when I first saw it alongside the 765, it was the only Berkshire I'd seen twice. Actually, I think it was the only steam locomotive I'd seen twice in two different locations. So that in itself was pretty neat. This has a ESU decoder. It still needs a couple details reattached to it. It needs a coal load. But it's got Mars light, headlight, cab light, backup light, whole works. I was planning on maybe doing the marker lights, but I decided it was just too much effort, and I was also really sick of working on this thing. It took me a lot of trial and error to get this thing running right. And it still does not run that great. I'm a little disappointed. It's also incredibly light, so it does not pull. In fact, actually, the Bachmann engines will outpull it, which is depressing, but is what it is. It's still a decent model. I can add more weight to the boiler, but then I gotta resort the springs on it, because I think the springs also contribute to why this thing just doesn't have enough pressure on the wheels going to the track. So it also stutters a lot in spite of having a keep alive. So yeah, it still needs a little bit of work, but man, it's getting there. Then we have arguably the cream of the crop at the moment, alongside my big boy. And yeah, you can call me a nutcase for liking this thing, but I do. My MTH nickel plate 765. This is the Mars Light equipped version. I wanted 765 as she appears today, or at least as close to as she appears today as possible. Bought this model secondhand. It's the most expensive nickel plate steam locomotive I own. Not the rarest, that would be the 757, but this thing has the works, obviously, synchronized smoke, uh, working number boards, marker lights, Mars light, headlight, cab light, backup light, rear marker lights, you name it. And it's also the version that's got whistle steam. And this has the best whistle steam on. I mean, MTH as a whole had the best whistle steam feature of any locomotive out there. It's certainly lacking in quite a few areas. I mean, you can even see on the front end, just compared to the 757, it looks a little too toy-like. But from the right angles, it actually doesn't look terrible. But that's my personal opinion. That it might also just be because I really actually like this thing. And there's a few small details that they actually got right, and I really should make a full video about this because this isn't actually as bad in some cases as people make it out to be. Obviously, if you don't like Protosound 3, you're going to have problems with the electronics, but I think it's an excellent model for what it is. If it didn't cost, for $400, I think this is acceptable for what it is. Any more than that, I would say it's probably way too much. But yeah, obviously this tooling still has a lot of longevity because there's a lot of people that really want the Scaletrains Berkshire. So, and the Scaletrains models are, again, just clones of the MTH equipment. And then lastly is my other Pacific Fastmail Burke, currently unnumbered. I don't know if this is going to be an S2 or an S3. I'm leaning towards an S3 because I already have two S1s, two S2s. So I think this is going to end up being an S3. I'm probably going to make it either the 770 or the 771. Haven't quite decided yet. I got a few details I still got to do with this. I need to replace the trucks because the trucks are incorrect size. They're too short. They're right in terms of being Buckeye trucks, but they need to be bigger. So the Pacific Fastmail Burks are actually decent models as it stands, but they certainly have their fair share of detail and accuracies. I've had to do a lot of changes. Recenter the headlight on this one. I also swapped out the number boards for the C&O style. Added a Mars light, fabricated a little bracket out of styrene for that. And I have a 3D printed radio box to go on the tender that I need to remake for this one because the old one broke. And then I also added the third dynamo on this. I don't remember if that was an S3 mod, so that alone might make this an S2. Oh, and I also got to swap out the whistle as well. I removed the original whistle, and I got to buy the Cowscale nickel plate whistle. Plan on doing that for 765 too. Give it a correct nickel plate whistle. So yeah, these aren't terrible models. They're significantly heavy. This is certainly the heaviest Berkshire that I own compared to these three. And like I said previously, I used to have two of these, and one of them was the 742 that I customized and still regret selling. There is a small part of me that is debating rebuilding this one as the 742 or the 744, making a second one, but I'm not 100% sure yet. So that does it for nickel plate. That is everything I own in terms of the nickel plate, all in this setup. So we're going to move on to New York Central next. So obviously I don't have near as much in the way of New York Central as I do nickel plate. Again, I'm simply focusing on larger equipment. There's still a few more models that I'd like to get, but what I have here is a good starting point, at least for what I'm looking to do. So this is the only diesel I have, and this one's technically an anomaly because it's out of era by quite a bit. This is the Proto 2000 E8, the 4064 in the cigar band scheme. This has been upgraded to lock sound. Has a cab light, but I got to remount the cab light because it's actually sitting way too low. It's actually in the fireman's face on this thing. The main reason I kept this is because I actually kind of like the cigar band scheme. I know it's really simple and bland compared to the lightning stripe, but this came to me again in that big $400 lot. There were two of these. One of them, unfortunately, was knocked to the floor and destroyed, so I sold it for parts and kept this one. But yeah, for what I'm doing, this one's fine. I don't know if I'm going to get rid of it or trade it just yet, but as it stands, good model. Next up is the Broadway Limited J1E 5316, customized with a graphite smoke box. And it also has a modified smoke unit that I need to actually open up and talk about at some point, because the guy that worked on this thing did a really good job fixing the smoke unit so that it won't melt the boiler shell. It's got a few other things that I'd like to do to it. I really want to replace the number board or the number plate at some point, you can obviously see that the 5 is scuffed off, but as it stands, it's pretty much stock. I may even also trade this one. I don't know yet. I just haven't run it that much. It's a very nice model, but I personally would kind of rather have a slightly newer one or a less beat up one, because this one's really beat up for what it is. So yeah, I don't know yet. This one's on the fence, but still a good model. Another cream of the crop locomotive, my MTH Empire State Express Hudson, another recent acquisition. This was the first locomotive I purchased this year. Found it on eBay for $350, knew that I was taking a gamble on it, bought it, found out it had a cracked gear, but was able to fix it by actually pulling the traction tire equipped drivers off of their axle and swapping them over to the non-traction tire equipped axle. And so this thing still runs as is. I did have to quarter the drivers by eye, which was not fun, but I did manage to get it, and it does run smooth. I can verify that it runs smooth. It is an excellent model. Again, being MTH still lacks in a few areas on detail. Sorry about the cut. Family came home, so need to go talk to them and grab dinner. But yeah, Empire State Hudson, excellent model. Please check out the whole video if you're interested. It is definitely one of my favorite locomotives that I have at this point. And then the locomotive that kicked off the dive into New York Central, the Mohawk, number 3064. It's an L3C. It does have some incorrect details. In fact, I think this thing actually represents an L3A more appropriately, because the pilot on this thing is an L3A pilot. The L3Cs were, I believe, the freight Mohawks, so they had a completely separate or completely different pilot than this. So yeah, I am seriously considering turning this into a 3001 to replicate the Mohawk that's getting restored by Fort Wayne. But I've seen so many other people do that, and I don't want every 3064 that comes across everybody's collection to become 3001. So I may just leave this as 3064 and then renumber a different Mohawk later. So yeah, that's everything New York Central that I have. There will be more. I'd like to get a Dreyfuss Hudson at some point. I want to get an unstreamlined J3 and a Niagara at some point as well. Maybe one or two more Mohawks. But again, I don't want to go too crazy on New York Central. So yeah. All right, on to the Union Pacific. Here is number 4466, my first completed custom brass locomotive with a Tsunami 2 decoder and Keep Alive. Excellent little model. A great starting point for getting used to working on brass equipment. Broadway Limited's UP844, the Living Legend. She is an excellent model. Looks beautiful. Still needs a few detail mods. And it is on deck to get a lock sound conversion, because while the Paragon 4 has been pretty reliable, I am tired of one little thing goes wrong and the decoder has to get a hard reset, and then I have to change all the CVs. So it's going to get reprogrammed, or can't think of the word. It's going to get a new decoder, and it's going to be lock sound. So yeah, amazing model. Love this thing to death. The Conductors Club UP3985 with the quote-unquote sounds off the real 3985. I think it's really only the bell, because the engine sounds and chuff sounds are literally just the big boy. The whistle is mediocre at best. So this might get a lock sound upgrade as well. Well, probably is going to get a lock sound upgrade for that matter. But very nice looking model. I do wish it had the tender connection to the big boy and the A44 have, so that I could separate it to work on the model on its own, but as it is, it's pretty nice. And then of course 4014, which is eventually going to get the triple dynamo set up and a few other mods to more closely resemble the real thing. This thing has been getting a much needed rest, considering I've run this thing into the dirt from the time that I bought it 4 years ago. I can't believe I've had this thing for 4 years. There is also a small part of me that wants to trade it for the MTH Big Boy again, but the MTH Big Boys are becoming increasingly more difficult to find and very expensive when they do show up. So yeah, don't know about that. I'll probably be hanging on to this for a while. Still going to get a lock sound upgrade. I'd like to do custom sound files for these two. ESU's already got a good file for 844, but Big Boy and the Challenger kind of deserve custom sound files. So yeah. And finally, we're on to the miscellaneous boys. Or gals. I don't know. Miscellaneous steam power. We have the Scale Trains Norfolk and Western 611. The nose proportions are a little goofy, but all in all, solid engine. Really like this one. Does need a new whistle, and I don't like the red. The red's a little too almost brown, per se, compared to a lot of other Norfolk and Western models. I think Scale Train's kind of botched the red on this. It looks like they're fixing it on their new ones, but I don't know for sure. I'm not going to be selling this to buy a new one, though. I'd rather just hang on to this one. Then we have my entirely customized SP4449 and MTH model. Uses new shells on a large, in the SP lines tender on a large letters chassis. So it's, this is a 1 of 1, has the number boards for the Morning Daylight Trade 99 when it came with Train 70, which I think is the Coast Daylight. But the SP modelers can correct me on that. I'm not 100% certain. So that is, this thing is probably due for a total strip down and clean out, because it's running a little high on amperage, and not a bad runner by any means, but it definitely needs some work. So, and then these two, starting with this little guy, this is my Rivarossi C16. This is actually in bits right now. It is in the process of getting a new can motor, and I also need to replace the tender shell. I want to convert this engine to DCC. I'm not a B&O guy by any means. Great, now I'm not going to be able to get that shell back on. Oh, there we go. Not a B&O guy by any means, but I do like my small steam switchers, and this seemed like an easy one to work on. So going to get new headlights, as many etched brass details as I can fit on this thing where possible. And then it'll get probably a Blue Nami, smaller Blue Nami decoder if I can help it. I'd like to put Blue Nami in this little guy. And this is one that I think I've only made a post about. I haven't really talked about, and obviously it's really in bits, but this is a New Jersey Custom Brass Pennsylvania Railroad CC2. It's currently stripped down and getting ready to get a paint or get a bath in vinegar and get cleaned. So I don't know if that's going to affect the clear coat or not, but if it's even got a clear coat, I haven't really been able to tell. So it's going into a bath alongside a couple projects from another friend of mine, and hopefully this thing turns out excellently. I'm really happy to have one of these. It doesn't really fit any of the theme of my collection, but this came up at a train show for like $250, and I figured it seemed worth it. So if anybody's got any pointers on how to work on this, please just let me know. So that is pretty much going to do it for the roster update. I apologize about how much I've talked and that I don't really have a cohesive direction with where this was going, but I just wanted to give you guys an update of where I'm at, what's going on with me. I'm going to try to keep up with making content where I can. Obviously, like I said, I don't really love talking to a camera, but got to get better at it to some degree. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video whenever that comes out.